bit comforted actually by spending the hour together. So thank you for giving up your time for being here despite all of that going on. Before I say anything, if I was listening in, I would also be keen to hear the other three voices that are going to join me on the call this evening. So we're going to do a quick round of introductions. My name is Rachel, as the name says. I am 39, so I'll be representing the 30s in our conversation. And for me, this event has been a long time coming. B.
Hi, I'm B. I am 27, so therefore representing the 20s. Really excited about this event. I should also say that I am related to the elder of the group, Rebecca. I am Rebecca's daughter. So just to kind of make that connection now. But yeah, really excited to be here, and thanks everyone for joining.
Natalie.
Hello, I am Natalie, 46, so therefore representing the 40s this evening. Like my friends here, just delighted to be here, really excited about this event, and looking forward to sharing some, what we believe, really valuable lessons with you.
And Rebecca.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rebecca, and I'm the elder, apparently. So I'm 56 and so excited about the fact that we're doing this. The four of us, we're doing this, and that you've all joined us, which is just so thrilling.
Thank you. So that is all four of us. A bit of background to why and how we are here. We've had an evolving friendship over the past couple of years, and late last year, I think between Rebecca and I, we had the idea that actually in the sharing of our experiences and to listening to how we make mistakes, fail, learn, grow, be human beings, we found that the four of us sharing with one another became more and more useful the more we did it. So as the four of us have prepared for this event over the last 5 months, no matter who has been sharing their particular experience, from irrelevant as to which decade they sat in, the other three of the group completely related to their examples and to their learning. And two things happened out of this. Each time we've met up, each time we've communicated and shared what we've been learning, all of the other three have felt comforted in some way. So it's almost like, oh, it's not just me that feels that way, or, oh wow, I'm not the only one that's thought that or been there. And the second thing that's been happening is, as we listen to one another and what we're going through, we've all learned things. So whilst we're absolutely nowhere near the finished article, never will be, it's meant that our life experiences as a whole have become richer, and a feeling of lightness has kind of spread across the four of us because we've been sharing what we've been learning. And all of that has led to us just understanding a bit more quickly and a bit more usefully what it means to be a human being. So we thought, why not just make this a bit more formal and a bit more public and share it with a slightly larger group? Because if we're getting this kind of value, why not share that stuff? So that's how we're all here. As the kind of introducer of the conversation tonight, I have a few notices. Bit of HR, bit of health and safety. So what we're saying is we're apologising right up front that we've muted everyone for the purposes of the conversation. It's so that we don't get distracted. If you're new to Zoom, or even if you're not, that means we've turned the chat function off. Towards the end of the call, so about 10 minutes before we end, 10 to 9, we will enable chat so that we will ask you for any immediate feedback that you might have. If you need to get it out of your system, or just say anything, we're looking for feedback. We've had hundreds of ideas about what we might do with this next and where this kind of concept might go, but you're all here because you're in some way recommended to us or know us or supporting us, and we'd love your thoughts about what else we might do with this. So that will be enabled at 10 to, and we'll let you know when that happens. We are recording this session for those who can't make it, so that we will be able to send that on. And in the next day or two, you'll receive an email from us just asking, again, a couple more questions just about what you found useful, what you may or may not like in the future, just to help inform what we might do with this conversation. Again, in Zoom, because there are so many of us on the call, I don't know what your settings are on right now, but you may prefer to go into the top right-hand corner somewhere and select speaker view, that gives you probably a larger version of my face. I'm not kind of blowing my own trumpet, rather than having 50 different squares popping up and looking at you. So speak of you is what we have it on. It's totally up to you. Also feel free to turn your video off, because this evening was really about coming along, listening, relaxing. Our intention for the hour is really that it's an informal and relaxed space. How it's going to work is we'll each have only a few minutes to speak, actually, by the time I shut up and we get into it. A few minutes to speak about what our greatest learning has been in this particular decade. And then the other three are going to ask whoever's spoken just some questions that come naturally. We've done it a couple of times as a run through, and we've asked different things each time, so we don't even know. And then as once we've done all of that, we'll then wrap up at the end and give you some kind of next steps and some good wishes. Before I hand over to B, who's going to start us off and take us through her biggest learning from her 20s, a few things just to say up front. Because we're not coming from hugely diverse backgrounds, and actually even if we were, we're all speaking tonight from our own experience. That's point one. And point two, and I wanted to kind of hold a giant flag up or shine a spotlight on the screen right now to make this point, but we certainly don't come at this conversation with a kind of, hey, check out us four. We really know what we're doing now. We're sorted in life. It's really not about that at all. We found the sharing of our experiences and what we're learning just super useful to help one another put down some of the more unhelpful stuff that we may have been carrying unconsciously or not. We hope you enjoy it. I will hand you over to B, our first wonderful speaker for the 20s. B.
Thanks, Rachel. I would also say that obviously, as you've probably been experiencing yourselves with coronavirus, the internet can be precarious. So if anything happens, then we'll just kind of go with it. So what I wanted to talk to you about this evening was expectations, because this has been a huge learning for me. I've always set very high expectations for myself, and I think I've always put pressure on myself to live up to other people's expectations as well. So whether that's kind of doing well in school, at university, that kind of pressure to go on and get a good job afterwards. And I think in part, at least, that certainly led me to experience feelings of anxiety, stress, depression. I was diagnosed with an eating disorder when I was 14. Because I think when we're trying to live up to those expectations, whether they're from our friends, our family, society, it can all start to feel pretty heavy. And that's certainly what I experienced. Now, as Rachel said, I'm representing the 20s, and when I was thinking about what to say this evening, it occurred to me that throughout your 20s, there are an awful lot of milestones that you're expected to hit, because it's essentially the decade that you're really becoming an adult. So what I wanted to share with you, I'm just going to read it out, is just my experience of those milestones and the expectations that come with them. Now, this is just from my perspective, so yours may well differ a little or a lot, but I hope it's helpful anyway. So this is what I've written. Firstly, graduate university, with high marks, of course. Find a job, a good one, like one that pays well, but also gives you a good work-life balance, and of course makes you happy. Start climbing that career ladder, even if you're not sure the job you're doing is what you really want to be doing. Go above and beyond, go for that promotion, show that you're leadership material. Have a thriving social life and make sure that everyone knows about it. Find the perfect partner, travel the world, particularly before you have any children to tie you down. Buy a house, because you really should be getting on that property ladder. Get engaged, get married, and maybe even have your first child, and don't forget to keep climbing that career ladder. Whew. Now, I don't know where I learned this, but somehow this kind of version of success has become the norm for me and a lot of the people around me. And we're so often measuring ourselves against these expectations, often without even realizing it because they're so ingrained. And what I found is that with these expectations, we turn them into I shoulds. So I should get married, I should have children, but they're not always I want. So they're not always kind of aligned in that way. And what I found when I was thinking about what to say this evening what occurred to me was that these expectations are often reinforced in quite subtle ways. So it might be kind of a passing comment from a parent, or a conversation with your boss, or even kind of targeted ads on social media. And what made me laugh was yesterday evening, when I was kind of thinking about what to say this evening, and I was kind of thinking about this social media thing, that afterwards I went onto social media and a targeted ad came up for engagement rings, which may or may not be based on my browsing history, but for me that was a kind of society telling me that it's about time that I got married. So I found it quite funny anyway, I thought I'd share that. So yeah, so it can be reinforced in quite subtle ways, which I think is quite interesting, but then it's kind of made more obvious when you try and deviate from them. And that's kind of speaking from my own personal experience. So whether that's kind of taking the decision to take a U-turn on your career and actually decide that you don't want to do the stable 9-to-5 job that your parents have hoped for so long, and you get that kind of raised eyebrow when you talk about it, or God forbid you don't want children and you're met with this kind of shock and concern from people. So what I found of it is that it's all quite hard to escape, and it can often feel really quite overwhelming. But what I've realized about this, which is kind of one of the main lessons I want to share with you this evening, what I've realized is that it's not the expectations and that external pressure in itself that makes us feel anxious, stressed, worried. It's the story we make up around it that does. Because when we feel like we're falling short, we create a story about how we're failing, we're not good enough, we're not successful, we'll only be happy when we've achieved all those things. I'm sure we've all kind of had those thoughts about, yeah, but I'll be happy when. And so we kind of tell ourselves that we're lacking in some way, and unsurprisingly, this affects our state of mind and our well-being. So what I've learned, which has been huge for me, is that it's all made up, both the expectations and the story we make up around them. So for example, the story I create in my mind about what might happen if I left my stable 9-to-5 job, that story, it's made up, and it's also not helpful. All those shoulds that we make up, they're not helpful because they limit what we do in life, and they take us away from what we actually want to be doing. And I think also, like, we so often don't even realize that we're doing this, kind of making up all these stories, and we create so many of them all the time, but they become so ingrained that they become these kind of blind spots, and I'm absolutely guilty of that. But for me, realizing that all of that stuff is only ever created by my insecure thinking has been such a massive relief, because what I once thought was kind of solid and real, all those things that I thought I had to do and what it would mean if I didn't, they're not solid at all. And when I've realized that, it kind of means that they have so much less power, because they're not made of anything. They're all in my mind. And so now I don't really take it all so seriously. And God, we take life so seriously. And if there's one thing I can kind of take off that list, then I'm all for it. But yeah, I don't take it so seriously anymore, and I'm also a lot more aware of when I'm actually starting to create all those unhelpful stories about all those millions of reasons of how I might be falling short. And God, what a weight off my mind. All those years of believing all those heavy stories about how I'm not good enough and how I'm falling short. What a relief that it's all made up. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to share. But the kind of the big caveat to all of this, which I want to put out there, is as Rachel was saying at the start, is that I still get caught up now and again. I think we all do. I mean, with this whole lockdown, I think so many of us are kind of having all sorts of thoughts and stories about not being productive enough and not making a banana bread like everyone else has been doing. And I'm exactly the same. We're all exactly the same. But I think what the difference now is that I'm able to kind of catch myself before I get too far down that road. And I can kind of remind myself that that thinking isn't helpful. It doesn't serve me. And that, yeah, I don't have to take it all so seriously. So to kind of leave you with one overarching piece of advice, as it were, I think it's just noticing when you're creating those stories about how you might be falling short, and just kind of being aware of what's going on. And then also just knowing that you really don't have to take them so seriously. And I think those have been the kind of the two big game changers for me, really. So yeah, so that's me. I'm now going to be grilled by the others, I think. So go ahead.
The word grilling didn't come to mind at all, B. I just wanted to say that how wonderful that you're in your 20s and have seen through some of these stories, as you say. And yeah, day to day, what kind of impact does that leave you with?
I think it's just kind of taking a weight off, because I think I've always carried all of those expectations around with me, and some of them are kind of the big life things that I listed, but it might be a kind of expectation to, I don't know, choose the right sandwich when you go out for lunch with your friends, or like there are so many, like wearing the right kind of jeans, or I feel like there are so many that we don't even realize exist. And so actually just knowing, like really knowing that none of it matters, and it's all made of this, all our thoughts, which is the exact same stuff that creates all these crazy dreams that we have. Like why do we believe the day thoughts and not the ones we have at night that convince us that we're riding a unicorn through space? I don't know. As an insight into my dreams. But yeah, I think just feeling lighter, and I think that point around not taking it so seriously and not taking life so seriously has been a massive thing for me. Yeah.
And I love what you said there, that list of milestones is relevant whatever decade we're in as well. We all have similar ones. And I think that that's just useful to notice, that it's not just relevant to you in your 20s or those that are here listening to us that are in their 20s, but just casting our mind to our own list of made up milestones.
Lovely.
Yeah. So I'm now going to pass over to Rachel, who is her big lesson from her 30s.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Hi. So when we started talking about this, we all came up with probably about 50 things that we've really learned in our decades that we wanted to share. So it was a real challenge to point to the biggest one or the most meaningful one. And after serious consideration, I came up with comparisons, and how kind of now I've stopped, or for the majority of the time I've stopped. And this is what happened. And for those of you who know me, this will make you laugh, because you know me. So about 12 months ago, I found myself worrying, and this is quite a privileged example, but stick with me. I found myself worrying that I had not yet managed to take my 7 and my 4-year-old on a skiing holiday. I know. And that somehow I thought they might be missing out, and that I was therefore just a rubbish mother. And I was in this kind of, oh, you know, I can't afford this kind of holiday. I now live in quite a wealthy town in Surrey, and I can't afford to give my children a similar experience. And I heard my mum, God rest her soul, say, oh, get a grip, Rachel. And that's really what I needed. But also, I found myself laughing at myself at how ridiculous it was that I would even spend any time worrying about that, but that I was also worried about my own children's experience based on them not having this holiday. And I laughed for a couple of days, but it led to me really becoming very aware of how often I had been unhelpfully comparing myself against other people. And thinking about what I might say tonight, I just wrote a short list of the comparisons that have come up in my head in the last 4 weeks, just to give you a sense of this, just to see if you can relate to some of them. The first one, oh, she's thinner than me. I should probably go on a diet. He seems busier than me. He must be much more successful. Her clients are more impressive than mine. She must be better at her job. And then my current favorite, and this will hit some of you, he messages about homeschooling learning activities all the time. He must be a better parent. So I started thinking, you know, what is it that leads us to compare, and why am I doing that? I'm a sensible person. I have good people around me. I have wonderful friends. What leads me to do this stuff? And in my thinking, I realize it's because on some levels I'm insecure. So I'm comparing myself to make sure I'm doing enough, comparing myself to other people. Probably fear that I'm not doing enough, so I must try harder in some way. And then as I noticed all of the ways I compared, I sometimes do really useful comparisons. So if I need more information about something, or if I'm sense checking something, then actually a comparison with where somebody else is up to or what they're doing can be quite useful. So I found good reasons to do this, but most of the time I realized that my comparisons, in almost all cases, I was the lesser of the two things being compared. That was the first realization. And then the second thing, I always seem to compare myself, or when I'm comparing, it's always to do with something external or something material that I don't have yet, or that I want, or that I aspire to. But the kind of aspirations I was having was not about improving my own well-being or something for myself internally or my family. It was more, oh, that person has something I don't, so I should therefore go and earn more money. Or so I was not ever comparing like for like. And on that day, the skiing holiday day, when I just burst out laughing and realized that I can't compare, particularly if it's not like for like, and also just to really get a grip of what I was doing to myself, having such unhelpful comparisons, a few things have happened since. So in the dropping of the comparisons, or certainly not doing this as often, life has become much more straightforward and much more fun. I guess because my headspace isn't taken up with so much crap. And in order to kind of make sure I don't do that very often, I have a few things that I'm trialing and having success with. So on the days where I kind of wake up and I feel a bit snappy or a bit grumpier than usual or a bit funny, I will find a quiet minute and just think through, am I comparing myself in some way to something, and therefore I'm lesser somewhere in my own head? That's the first thing I'm doing. The second thing I'm doing, and particularly with what's going on at the moment, is I'm practicing gratitude more regularly. I am by no means a spiritual guru of any kind. In reality, this means about once a week, I remember to be grateful. And it kind of sounds a bit like, oh, here you go, Rach, you know, you have a roof, you have a bed to sleep on, your kids are okay, blah, blah, blah. So I about once a week, I'm doing that. And that seems to fill my head with all of the things that I do have, and therefore leaves less space for all the things that I don't have. And so it's just becoming less of a thing. So I find that really useful. And then when I'm wanting things, because I noticed that there's usually some kind of external or material thing that I'm comparing myself against somebody else, that I don't have this thing. When I want something, I do a little self-check in my head. So do I want this for the greater good of Rachel and her family? or do I want this because I feel like I should have this thing? And then it helps me to make a more informed decision about what I'm doing. So those things have really helped. And then my favorite example of what's helping me to just compare less, the advert, for those of you in the UK, we have a quite an annoying advert called Go Compare. Go Compare. So every time I hear that advert, I hear don't compare. And that has been a really definitely weekly reminder of just don't compare, like just stop. So even though this learning hit me when I was 38, I've realized over the last, well, my entire life I've been comparing to this point. And the thing I wanted to share with you today is using any of those techniques or none of them at all, but just can we all stop? Can we all stop comparing? Because we're all different and we're all brilliant. And that was my biggest learning. Ladies?
Oh, I love it. And in fact, B&I, as an aside, the Go Compare man interviewed B&I on BBC Radio Wales. There you go.
Thanks for putting that theme tune in everyone's head now.
Yes,
exactly.
Sorry.
Sure, you're gonna thank her for that one.
The thing that I just wanted to say, there were two quotes that came into my mind as you were talking about comparison, and one of them was from Theodore Roosevelt, I think, who said, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and boy, isn't that true. And the other one is from somebody called Steve Furtick, and I don't know anything about him apart from this wonderful quote, which is something along the lines of, "We suffer because we compare our highlight reel, our behind the scenes with somebody else's highlight reel." And especially on social media, we're doing that. And I think there's risk at this time where we're all struggling. Well, some of us are struggling with COVID-19, that there can be that comparisonitis that goes on. So I think it's just noticing that.
And I think, yeah, I just echo that. And I think it's that noticing thing, because I think so many of us compare ourselves to other people or other things without even realizing it. And I think for me, that just having an increased awareness of what's actually going on has been massive. Because once we're aware of what's going on, then we're able to catch ourselves or do something about it. But I think when we get so caught up. I think social media is obviously a fine example of that, when we can get so tangled up in it and not even realizing that every image we flick past, we're comparing ourselves to it subconsciously. So I think it's almost just kind of bringing that up to the surface has been really helpful for me, because then, yeah, once you know what's going on, then you can do something about it.
You can stop it most of the time.
Yeah, or just see it for what it is.
Yeah, you get people around you to go, seriously, Rach, seriously? And then I go, okay, sorry, I missed that one, thank you. Yeah, I will hand over to the lovely Natalie to take us through her 40s.
Thank you very much. And as the other ladies, I totally resonate with it. Everything you're saying resonates with me as well, in that trap of comparing and trying to catch ourselves in it. The lesson I wanted to share from my 40s, I didn't deliberate too long over what ones to share, because what I'm going to share has had such a big impact on me that it was a bit of a no-brainer. This is the one I wanted to discuss. And the lesson is that perfect doesn't exist. So let me say a little bit more about that and why that's meaningful to me. So throughout my 20s and my 30s, I always endeavoured to do my best, be the best version of myself, and do the right thing. And through this time, picked up lots of habits of perfectionism and always looking outside of myself for what the next thing I needed to do to be the best version of myself. And it resulted in me devouring self-development books and self-help books, always looking to what the next thing I needed to do to make Natalie more rounded and complete, I guess. I was happy, I was healthy, but always as a result of this way of being that I didn't question. I was aiming for the best version all the time, but it was quite a stressful way of being, and I didn't question it. I just thought that's the norm. I have very high expectations of myself, and I didn't really question that my version that I was aspiring to of perfect was just this very narrow story, if you like, that I'd created of what the perfect employee would look like, or what the perfect mother would look like, or what the perfect entrepreneur would look like. And as I said, I was always kind of devouring articles and reading and looking outside of myself for the thing I'd missed. And so when I started questioning this and seeing through the story I'd created around what I was aspiring to, it really was massively transformational, because I went from a place where I was continually working towards this bar. Okay, so that's what I need to do. I'm working towards that. I kind of get there, and then the rung goes up, and then I'm working towards that. And it was a continual striving, continual achieving, continual, I need to do this to be more the full ticket, I guess. Stemming through insecurities, you know, at the root of it all. But preparing, being a perfectionist, anticipating, trying to control, all those things helped me feel confident, helped me feel able and equipped to face whatever I needed to face, to try and be in control of it. And it was hard work and exhausting. And I took it for granted that that was my way, that was me, that was how life was. So to discover that this idea of perfect was, I genuinely had made it up. To discover that it was very narrow and fixed and only one way of looking at it, was a huge relief, and so transformational, in that what I went from continually experiencing feeling quite stressed and you know, psyched up, hyper, always feeling very much got to be in control of this. And it was very exhausting and draining, and always looking to the experts and outside of me of what great would look like. And then I started to see through that and listen more to myself of what felt right. Like, I was aware I had intuition, and, you know, but I don't really feel I valued it. I don't feel I trusted it. I trusted what the experts were saying and what others were saying more than what my internal kind of voice, my internal GPS, if you like, was saying the way that was right for me to move forward. So when I started listening less to the cacophony of noise in my head that was the shoulds and the oughts and the musts, and when I wised up to the fact that I had my self-worth somehow tangled up with my achievements, when I wised up to that, saw through it a bit, then I could relax a lot more. And the relaxation, not to say I'm always the relaxed person, because I'm not, but just realizing I don't have to be on a constant quest for being perfect in all the things I do, as a byproduct, I think has resulted in more perfection in my life. Would you believe it? I never would have believed that. Just because I'm showing up more human, more vulnerable, more me. So the motto is perfect doesn't exist. And when we see through some of the rules we've made up about what things need to look like, what we might need to achieve to be successful or worthy, when we see through some of that stuff for the stuff that it is, which is made up and story, then it opens up a huge, wonderful space to be more free. And that's been very joyful. I feel so blessed that I've learned it in my 40s and can take that with me. And yeah, I hope for you, if this resonates at all, that that's something you can reflect on. Ladies.
I have a question, hands up. We've talked a bit before as well about how you mentioned preparation and trying to be in control. So I'll think through every possible outcome or question that might be asked in that meeting, but also that could also carry through to a conversation. So I'll think about how they could possibly respond to me and think through all my answers. You know, if you're not doing that much prep now and you're just turning up, I mean, what's that like, and how much more time have you got now, I guess? Or have you got more time now?
So I guess I'm still busy, but it's a different sort of busy, because I guess I'm doing more what I'm interested in and curious about. And the busyness, well, when I choose to be busy, it isn't accompanied by the stress that it was. So I can have a lot to do, but it's not accompanied with the same stress to control it all. And yeah, I used to, so if I had a meeting, if I had a workshop I needed to deliver, the preparation was, I didn't question it, but and I felt that it gave me confidence. Like I really believed that would help me walk in with confidence. But it was bordering almost on learning a script because I wasn't trusting what would come in the moment. And now, like, to come to this without script, to just show up and explore what emerges and be okay if there's mistakes. It's like such a revelation. And yes, so I experience more, yes, but more time, but most notably more spaciousness, as opposed to the tightness that comes with stress. It's more spacious, more fluid, more free, more lovely. But you know, as with all the other ladies, yes, because I'm talking about it, it feels lovely. And I frequently lose myself in this, and frequently the old habits of perfectionism and, oh, I've got to do this will come back. But as we've all noticed through our conversations, I'm so much quicker to catch it, and so much quicker to realize it's, yeah, I'm making it all up.
I love what you said about the kind of raising the bar all the time. I can totally relate to that. It's something I've talked about a bit before when I had my eating disorder, that it was like, I've got this is perfect. This is my like goal weight. Once I've reached this, I'll be fine. And then obviously as soon as you get like almost there, it then gets moved up a rung and up a rung. And I think it was quite interesting, the words you used around how your view of perfect was so fixed. But actually it wasn't at all, because it was changing all the time. It was always moving. And like, can you imagine running a race? And I wrote this somewhere. Running a 100-meter race, you get to like 90 meters and then someone at the side is like, oh sorry, it's changed to 200, and then you get round again, it's like, no sorry, 500 now. Like, how pissed off would you be by that? And yet we're always moving that end goalpost to something that's in the distance. It's that kind of mirage, that illusion of perfection that we all get caught up in. But yeah, I think that kind of the visual of the raising the bar before we even get to it is so helpful, because it makes you realize how unfair that game is.
Yeah, and when we don't reach the bar, we hit ourselves over the head, like you know, and it's just all fiction we've created. Seems like a really good idea and it's massively compelling. But we can choose a different way. Lovely. So this feels like a nice space now to pass over to Rebecca, representing our 50s decade.
Just checking I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted? Yeah. So thank you. Oh, do you know what? I could just sit and listen to you three all day long. It feels such a privilege. So I'm here representing the 50s, and I'm 56. Well, in fact, 57 in about 10 days' time. And when we were thinking about what I wanted to share, there were quite a few things, but the one that came out at the top for me was about success and redefining my version of what success looked like. And I hope that this resonates with some of you as well. So for way, way too many years, I had a really tight definition of what success was. And that was financial security, that was having a recognized and lucrative career, and that was being in a relationship, a loving relationship. And by that measurement, so that was my measurement, by that measurement I had failed. I was a stay-at-home mum. I was financially totally dependent on my husband for a while. I didn't even have what my dear grandma used to call running away money. I can't imagine that she ever would have done that. And I lurched from happiness to despair. I was happy because I felt very blessed that I was able to stay at home and raise my children, but also despair in so many other areas of my life. And I guess it had started at school, where from quite a young age, I always felt on the fringes of friendship groups. I was the last to be invited to things, or it felt like as a kind of, oh, we can't not invite her. I never felt quite good enough at sport or quite academic enough. And then my English teacher, some of you know this story, I know, my English teacher when I was 13, I mean, she was probably having a bad day, but she slammed down my exercise book on my desk in front of the whole class and said, "You have no imagination. How come you are so bad at English?" Now, she may well have been saying that for any number of reasons. One of them could have been to give me a kick up the bum. But what happened for me was that I then went on to fail my English language O-level. I just believed her. And so I did the rest of my O-levels, passed them, but could have done better. Same with my A-levels, could have done better. And then went to university, and again, could have done better. And when people were leaving and going off to get careers, I felt a complete failure. And I had applied for a couple of jobs and didn't get them, and ended up going to secretarial college. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just my definition that I wasn't good enough. And playing throughout my mind all of that time was not clever enough, not good enough, not confident enough. Never, ever once did I see that as a story, like the others have been saying. Never once did I see that as a story that I was playing out in my head. Never. I never considered that. It was my reality, it was true. And I got married young, I had started a family young, and in a way what that enabled me to do was to hide and to shrink away. And for me that was a blessing at the time, that I dipped into, I'm sorry, I'm having to let somebody else in, sorry. That was my reality, was that this was who I was, and that I was a failure because of this really tight definition. And then in the ensuing years, there are two people that stand out for me as having a profound impact on me changing that narrative. And one of them was one of my oldest friends, somebody I met the first day of university, and we love each other dearly, and we have a very amazing relationship that's lasted all these years. And I always had her on a pedestal because she always seemed so together. She always seemed to know what she was doing, where she was going. And straight from university, went into a career, and she was hugely successful. That's what I saw. Hugely successful, financially independent. And I always felt somehow inferior. And I don't know, it might have been in our early 40s. I don't even know whether she'd remember. But we were having a conversation over many glasses of wine. And I told her this. I told her that I looked up to her and had seen her as a success. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes. And I feel emotional now just thinking about it. And she said, "But you don't know that I look up to you in so many ways." And one of them for her was around parenting. And it shocked me to my core that somebody would see that about me. And for a moment, I have to say it didn't last very long, but for a moment, I got a different perspective. That what I was seeing out of my own eyes wasn't truth, wasn't reality. You see, because the thing is, what I was never taking account of was all the things I found easy, all of the things that I did naturally. Things like connecting with people, putting people at their ease, holding a space for people, coaching even. I mean, I've heard that friends at university said I coached them back then. I just did what I did. To parent, I found parenting came to me really naturally and easily. But that wasn't success in my eyes. It's even things like knitting and crafting, things like that I'm naturally adept at doing, and people I know now look at me as if I'm some kind of, I don't know, some weird person that does those things easily. But that wasn't success. And then the other person who had the profound impact on what I said, and the change has stuck, was B, my daughter. And about 18 months ago, when I was reeling from the end of a relationship and feeling pretty sorry for myself, because here I was, single, living in rented accommodation, living very precariously financially, and I was single again. And she stopped me in my tracks because she takes no nonsense. And she said, "I think it's about time, Mum, you redefined what success means." And it literally took my knees from me, because I saw what I was doing. And I saw all the ways that narrow definition was made up. in a way to punish myself for who knows what. And I've seen that success is something completely different. And I guess what I would ask you to consider is, what if success is just about showing up? Showing up wholeheartedly, vulnerably, without the many masks that we wear. What if that's what success really is? Natalie's spoken about perfection. And what if we are anyway? And we just show up? And Rachel, when she talked about comparison, I see that always as coming from a place of fear that, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not matching up. And what if we're okay just as we are? Human. And then B, with her list of milestones that are kind of laid down, unwritten. What if being human is enough? And I guess what I'd love you to consider, so my kind of key bit of advice, I guess, is to consider the impact on your life of redefining what you've always seen as your kind of view of what success is. Whatever your age, whether you're, and I know there are people on the call who are in their early 20s here. Don't waste time. And that's it from me, really. Over to you guys.
What a way to end. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I'm glad I had such a profound impact on you. You raised a good one. But yeah, I think it's, I mean, everything that we've all talked about is so applicable to all of us, and that's the beauty of this, that we're sharing our lessons from 4 decades, but actually the age doesn't matter at all, because they're applicable to whether you're 10 years old or 80. But I think for me, like that, the one about success is a huge one as well, because yeah, we do always have such a narrow kind of version of it, and I think it's something that maybe we're kind of brought up to aspire to achieve certain things, and then that just kind of sticks. But I guess all those kind of what if questions that you suggested at the end, it's just being open to the idea that it could look different, and having that kind of open mind, I think is so important, because otherwise we're not going to see anything different.
I love that idea of just that question, as you've said there, B, just asking ourselves that question, could I see this differently? Because if we can see that there's another version to see it, straight away we've shifted a perspective, and we can be more open to get closer to the truth, I guess. So I've just checked the clock, and we are nearly at the top of the hour, so it seems like an appropriate time to wrap this up, so you can continue your evenings. I wanted to say a big thank you for everyone who's joined us this evening. I've certainly loved being involved in this, and always love my conversations with these ladies, and this one was no different. We've all, as you can see, had different lives, different experiences, but huge similarities when it comes to the lessons we've learned and what we've shared with you this evening. And the common link is that we've all seen through a story we'd been telling ourselves of how life needed to look. In every one of our cases, we'd asked some questions, we'd challenged some ways of thinking and seen beyond some narrow rules we'd made up of how life needed to look. And in all our cases, that's opened the way to more joy in our lives, less suffering. I forgot to mention that the chat is now open, so there's a couple of minutes before we end, just to please feel free to add any feedback, ask any questions. We won't be answering any questions now because we're almost done, but we'll certainly be capturing everything that gets put in the chat. And our idea is that we would love this to grow into something where we continue, because we have so much more to say, and we found it massively valuable, our conversations. And if these conversations can be a catalyst for those listening to see some of their own rules that they've made up and let go of some of their shoulds, oughts, musts, we love to think of the idea of you maybe leaving some bags at the door and walking away lighter to enjoy life a little bit more. So everyone will receive an email with some information about a new Facebook group we've created, 4 Women, 4 Decades, and a request of your feedback. We would love to hear from you as to if we continue this. First of all, is there an appetite to continue, and what you'd like to hear more about? What topics could we cover that maybe would help you in your lives? So you'll look out for that email in the next couple of days. And yeah, these are uncertain times, but I hope this conversation has been helpful to you. And thank you so much for joining. I think Rebecca is now going to unmute us so we can all say a collective goodbye before we
Yeah, everyone's unmuted.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good to see you all.
So funny.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, Michelle, you were here too. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye. How wonderful is it to see everyone? How
I know everyone's checking out. Yeah, please feel free to leave. You don't have to keep waving, but it's just so nice to see you all because we've been really focused. Oh, that's funny. Becca, are we staying on for a minute or two?
I'm going to end now.
You're going to end now.
Bye.
Thank you.